Time, we assume, is a linear progression, a constant, unyielding force that moves from the past to the present, onward into the future. But what if this belief is simply an illusion? Imagine for a moment that time does not exist as we understand it. What if every second, every tick of the clock, is just a fleeting construct of our perception, an attempt to make sense of the chaos of existence? Physics has long questioned this idea. Einstein's theory of relativity shattered the notion of time as absolute, revealing that it bends and warps with gravity. And yet, we continue to experience it as something real, something that governs our lives. But if time is merely a mental framework, does that mean our past, present, and future are illusions? And if so, does it matter? Perhaps time is not the problem. It's the way we've been taught to measure it. Time, we assume, is a linear progression, a constant, unyielding force that moves from the past to the present, onward into the future. But what if this belief is simply an illusion? Imagine for a moment that time does not exist as we understand it. What if every second, every tick of the clock, is just a fleeting construct of our perception, an attempt to make sense of the chaos of existence? Physics has long questioned this idea. Einstein's theory of relativity shattered the notion of time as absolute, revealing that it bends and warps with gravity. And yet, we continue to experience it as something real, something that governs our lives. But if time is merely a mental framework, does that mean our past, present, and future are illusions? And if so, does it matter? Perhaps time is not the problem. It's the way we've been taught to measure it. We like to believe that we make choices, decisions shaped by our desires, goals, and reason. But what if free will is nothing more than an illusion, a comforting narrative we tell ourselves to make sense of our lives? Neurological research complicates this belief. Studies have shown that our brains initiate actions before we are consciously aware of them. Benjamin Libet's experiment demonstrated that the brain's electrical impulses precede the conscious awareness of decision-making, suggesting that what we perceive as a choice might already be determined before we consciously decide. If our brains are the ones making decisions, where does our freedom lie? Are we simply puppets, controlled by neurons and subconscious impulses? And yet, we continue to experience the weight of choice in our daily lives. Our victories, regrets, and struggles all seem to arise from the decisions we think we control. So, if free will is an illusion, does that mean it doesn't matter? Perhaps it's not the truth of our autonomy that's important, but the way we experience it. As artificial intelligence evolves, it presents an ethical conundrum. Who truly holds the reins? AI systems are becoming increasingly autonomous, able to make decisions without human intervention, yet they are designed and programmed by us. At the heart of the issue lies the question of accountability. If an AI makes a decision that causes harm, who is responsible? The developers who created it, the users who employed it, or the AI itself, now a seemingly independent entity? Philosophically, the dilemma deepens when we consider the nature of control. We like to believe that our actions are governed by moral responsibility, but with AI, control becomes more fragmented. Should AI have its own ethical guidelines, or should it be entirely subservient to human values? And as AI learns and adapts, how do we ensure its decisions align with our collective ethical standards? The challenge is not merely in regulating AI. but in defining what it means to be in control, especially when the lines between human intent and machine action grow ever more blurred. As we develop these technologies, we may find ourselves asking, are we shaping AI, or is AI in some ways beginning to shape us? The universe stretches out endlessly, a vast, incomprehensible expanse that seems to dwarf our existence. In the grand scheme of time and space, we are but a fleeting moment, a mere blip on the cosmic timeline. Our planet, a tiny speck in a galaxy of billions, orbits a star that will eventually burn out, swallowed by the inevitable entropy of the universe. Yet, we live as though our lives matter, as though our actions leave an imprint on this sprawling cosmos. Science tells us that the universe is expanding, that galaxies are drifting further apart, and that even time itself might one day come to an end. And yet, in this seemingly infinite universe, we still struggle with our own purpose, our search for meaning. Are we truly insignificant, caught in the blink of time's eye? Or is there something more, something deeper that ties our existence to the vastness of the cosmos? As we reach further into the unknown, one question remains. Does the universe care that we exist, or are we merely the echoes of a cosmic accident, destined to vanish as quickly as we appeared? What if the world we experience is nothing more than a sophisticated illusion? A computer-generated simulation so advanced that it feels as real as our every breath? The simulation hypothesis suggests just that our reality, from the ground we walk on to the stars above, could be a construct, a digital dream created by a higher intelligence. This idea, once confined to science fiction, has gained traction among thinkers like philosopher Nick Bostrom, who argues that if advanced civilizations have the technology to simulate entire worlds, it's statistically likely that we are living in one. But if our universe is a simulation, what does that mean for us? Are we mere characters, coded into existence, with predetermined paths? Does our free will hold any weight in this scenario, or are we simply following a script? The implications challenge everything we know about existence, questioning the very nature of reality itself. Yet, even if we accept this hypothesis, the experience of living, of making choices, and of feeling emotions remains undeniably real to us. So, whether we are in a simulation or not, the question remains, does it matter? Or perhaps, as we delve deeper into the nature of existence, the illusion itself may hold the key to something far greater than we ever imagined. Reality, as we know it, is not a fixed entity. It is shaped by the lens through which we perceive it. Our senses provide us with information, but our minds are the ones that interpret, process, and ultimately determine what we consider to be true. But is truth universal, or does it shift based on our subjective experiences? What we accept as reality is deeply influenced by our upbringing, culture, and personal experiences. Consider how two people can witness the same event and walk away with completely different versions of what happened. Each one's truth shaped by their own biases, emotions, and mental frameworks. Science tells us that the brain constantly filters and interprets sensory data, constructing a version of the world that feels consistent and real. Yet, we know that perception can be deceiving. Optical illusions, for example, show how our senses can trick us into believing something that isn't true. So, if our perception of reality is so malleable, how can we ever be certain of the truth? The more we attempt to uncover objective reality, the more we confront the complexity of our own minds, which may be just as much a part of shaping truth as the external world itself. In the end, the truth might not be something we find outside of ourselves, but something we create through our own perception of the world. Existentialism challenges the comforting structures we've built around meaning, urging us to confront a reality where nothing is inherently purposeful. It asks, what happens when we strip away the notion that life has a preordained meaning, that there is a grand cosmic plan at play? What is left when we accept that we are born into an indifferent universe, with no inherent guide to dictate our actions or values? The answer, according to existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, is that we are free, terrifyingly, uncomfortably free. In a world where existence precedes essence, where we are not born with a set purpose, we are forced to define ourselves through our choices and actions. But this freedom, as liberating as it may sound, comes with a profound responsibility. If there is no inherent meaning, we must create our own, and in doing so, we are forced to face the absurdity of life head-on. But perhaps therein lies the beauty of existentialism. The freedom of being nothing, of having no predetermined path, is also the freedom to become anything. In that emptiness, we find the power to shape our own existence, to live authentically, regardless of how fleeting or uncertain our time may be. And in that very freedom, we confront the deepest question: can we truly embrace the void, or will we continue to search for meaning in a world that offers none? Who are you really? This seemingly simple question uncovers layers of complexity when you begin to peel back the layers of identity, memory, and perception. The self, as we understand it, is often seen as an unchanging core, the essence that defines us from birth to death. But what if that self is an illusion? Psychological and philosophical inquiries into the nature of the self suggest that it is not a solid, fixed entity, but a fluid construct, shaped by our experiences, thoughts, and interactions. Buddhist philosophy argues that the self is a mere aggregation of fleeting thoughts, sensations, and perceptions with no permanent essence at its core. Neuroscience, too, challenges the notion of a stable self, revealing that our sense of identity is the result of neural processes that are constantly shifting. But if we are nothing more than the sum of our parts, memories, biological impulses, and environmental influences, what happens to the idea of personal responsibility or authenticity? Are we the products of our experiences, or do we have the agency to redefine ourselves? The truth may be that the self is not a singular, fixed identity, but an ongoing narrative, constantly evolving. And in this realization, perhaps we find the freedom to explore who we are, not as a static being, but as a process, ever-changing, shaped by the choices we make in the present moment. Nihilism presents a stark and unsettling view of existence, a world without inherent meaning, value, or purpose. It forces us to confront the possibility that life, in its essence, is meaningless. Without a higher power, a grand narrative, or a preordained purpose, what are we left with? In a nihilistic reality, the structures and ideologies that we cling to, morality, religion, societal norms, become nothing more than constructs, temporary solutions to an existential void. Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead, symbolizing the collapse of traditional values and belief systems, leaving humanity in a state of profound uncertainty. Without an objective meaning to guide us, we must confront the chaos of existence with no compass to direct us. This can feel overwhelming, even despairing, as we grapple with the idea that our actions, successes, and failures might ultimately be insignificant in the grand sweep of time and space. But perhaps nihilism, in its harshness, offers a peculiar form of liberation. If life is devoid of intrinsic meaning, we are free to create our own. The absence of universal purpose does not necessarily condemn us to emptiness. It offers the opportunity to define our own values, our own meaning. In a world where everything is transient and fleeting, the choice to find purpose becomes ours alone, a responsibility that, though daunting, also carries a strange kind of freedom. The butterfly effect suggests that the smallest actions can have profound, far-reaching consequences. A simple decision, a fleeting moment of choice, ripples through time, influencing outcomes in ways we may never fully understand. It's the idea that something as seemingly insignificant as the flap of a butterfly's wings could ultimately alter the course of history. This concept, rooted in chaos theory, challenges our understanding of control and fate. We often assume that the larger, more significant choices define our lives. But what if the opposite is true? What if it's the seemingly trivial decisions, the ones we make without thinking, that hold the true power to shape our futures? Consider how one random encounter could lead to a lifelong relationship. How a spur-of-the-moment decision could lead to a career change. Or how a single conversation might set a chain of events into motion that alters the course of history. It's easy to dismiss the small moments in our lives as inconsequential, but they may be the very moments that determine who we become and where we end up. The butterfly effect invites us to reconsider the weight of our actions, urging us to recognize that the future is not always shaped by the monumental, but by the subtle, often invisible forces that guide us. In this way, every choice, no matter how small, carries the potential to change everything. Time travel has long been a captivating concept in both science fiction and philosophical discourse, but with it comes a profound ethical dilemma. Should we, with the ability to alter the past, change history? The power to traverse time opens up a world of possibilities, yet also raises questions about responsibility, consequences, and the nature of free will. Imagine being able to prevent a tragic event like the assassination of a leader or the outbreak of a war. At first, such a change seems undoubtedly beneficial. But how can we predict the ripple effect of these actions? Even the smallest alteration could cascade into unpredictable outcomes, potentially causing even greater harm or creating unforeseen consequences. This is the essence of the butterfly effect, where a single change, no matter how seemingly insignificant, could disrupt the entire fabric of time. Furthermore, if we change history, do we not also alter the very foundation of who we are? Our personal identities are intrinsically tied to our experiences, to the lives we've lived and the choices we've made. But if we tamper with the past, do we risk erasing parts of ourselves? There is also the moral consideration of who gets to decide which events are worth changing. What might be perceived as an improvement for one person could devastate another. Time travel forces us to ask, is it ethical to interfere with the natural flow of history? Or does our inability to fully comprehend the consequences make us reckless in seeking to right what we perceive as wrong? Ultimately, the very nature of time travel demands that we question whether we have the wisdom, the foresight, or the moral clarity to wield such power? In the end, the question remains, even if we could change history, should we? Memory shapes our understanding of the world and ourselves, creating a bridge between past and present. Yet, how real are these memories? We trust our recollections, believing they offer an accurate representation of what has come before. But what if memory is more fluid than we realize? Neuroscience tells us that our memories are not static records, but dynamic processes subject to distortion, reconstruction, and even complete fabrication. Each time we recall a memory, it is subtly altered by new information, emotions, and external influences. This raises a profound philosophical question. If our memories are unreliable, can we truly trust our past experiences to define us? Philosophers like Augustine and Heidegger have long pondered the nature of time and existence, and how memory connects us to a past that is no longer tangible. Is the self built upon an illusion, a series of fragmented recollections that we piece together to create a coherent narrative? And if memory is not a perfect reflection of the past, does that mean our identities are equally constructed, not by the truth of our experiences, but by the stories we tell ourselves? The more we investigate memory, the more it seems that our past is not something we possess, but something we continually reconstruct, an ongoing process of creation, shaped by the very act of remembering itself. In the end, the question remains, are our memories real, or are they simply the echoes of who we wish we were? Imagine waking up in a different time, a century far removed from your own. How would your life unfold if you had been born in the 19th century, or perhaps the 15th? The world, as you know it, would be entirely different, shaped by technologies, societal norms, and values that are foreign to us today. The air would be thick with the scent of horse-drawn carriages, not the hum of electric cars. Communication would be through handwritten letters, not instant digital messages. What seems like an ordinary existence today, having access to the internet, medical advances, or global travel, would be unimaginable in that time. Your place in society would also be determined by a different set of rules. Gender, race, and class would likely carry far heavier restrictions, with opportunities available only to a select few. The pursuit of knowledge, though, would still be the same. You would still seek to understand your place in the universe, but with different tools at your disposal. And your answers would be shaped by the world view of that era. Would your intellect and curiosity be stifled, or would you find a way to thrive within the confines of that time? The more we consider this, the clearer it becomes that our current moment shapes who we are. But what if, just by being born at another time, we would be someone entirely different? Our identity forged not by personal choices, but by the very century in which we were born. This thought leads us to question, is our existence a product of time, or is time simply a backdrop to who we are and what we become? Dreams, often dismissed as mere fragments of our subconscious mind, hold a profound connection to our waking reality. We dream not just of fantastical realms, but of events, emotions, and people that mirror our daily lives, unveiling the complexities of our inner worlds. Psychology suggests that dreams are a manifestation of our unconscious desires, fears, and unresolved conflicts, offering a glimpse into the emotional and psychological landscape we may not fully understand while awake. Carl Jung, for instance, argued that dreams serve as a bridge to the unconscious mind, reflecting parts of our personality that we may suppress or deny in the conscious state. Yet dreams aren't just reflections of our emotional turmoil. They also carry symbolic meanings that can reveal hidden truths about our desires, ambitions, and even our sense of self. Consider how recurring dreams or themes emerge, often presenting unresolved issues or unresolved feelings in need of attention. Freud, too, believed that dreams are the fulfillment of repressed wishes, but they often present themselves in a disguised form to protect the conscious mind from confronting painful truths. Even in the most absurd or surreal dreams, patterns and connections to our waking experiences emerge, suggesting that our minds are constantly processing and interpreting the world around us, even when we're asleep. Dreams blur the line between reality and imagination, forcing us to question the nature of our consciousness. Are we simply living through the prism of our subjective realities, filtering everything through the lens of our dreams? If our unconscious mind can shape our perceptions while we sleep, then what does that say about the way we perceive the waking world? Ultimately, dreams invite us to explore the depths of our psyche, showing us that the line between reality and illusion is often thinner than we think. Death, the ultimate unknown, has puzzled humanity for as long as we've been capable of contemplating our own mortality. Is it truly the end, the final curtain on our existence? Or is it merely the beginning of something else, something beyond our understanding? Philosophically, death has been interpreted in myriad ways, from the complete cessation of consciousness to the belief in reincarnation or an afterlife. The ancient Greeks saw death as the end of the soul's journey, with the philosopher Socrates even suggesting that death might be a passage to a greater existence, free from the constraints of the physical world. Meanwhile, other cultures believe that death is a transition, not an ending, but a rebirth into another form of existence. Scientifically, however, the narrative is less comforting. Death marks the cessation of biological processes, and with it, the end of the mind's activity. But even in the finality of death, there are paradoxes that challenge this view. The fact that we fear it so deeply suggests that, at some level, we might instinctively sense there is more to existence than mere biology. Perhaps the fear of death isn't just about the end of life as we know it, but about the uncertainty of what follows. And yet, some argue that it is precisely the knowledge that our time is limited that gives life its meaning. Death, then, may not be an end, but a catalyst, urging us to seek purpose and connection in our fleeting moments. But if death is not the end, then what lies beyond? Is it an eternal sleep, a new beginning, or an existence entirely different from what we can imagine? The question remains unresolved, as much a mystery as life itself. Perhaps the only certainty is that, whatever lies beyond death, it is as much a part of the human experience as life itself. Death, the ultimate unknown, has puzzled humanity for as long as we've been capable of contemplating our own mortality. Is it truly the end, the final curtain on our existence? Or is it merely the beginning of something else, something beyond our understanding? Philosophically, death has been interpreted in myriad ways, from the complete cessation of consciousness to the belief in reincarnation or an afterlife. The ancient Greeks saw death as the end of the soul's journey, with the philosopher Socrates even suggesting that death might be a passage to a greater existence, free from the constraints of the physical world. Meanwhile, other cultures believe that death is a transition, not an ending, but a rebirth into another form of existence. Scientifically, however, the narrative is less comforting. Death marks the cessation of biological processes, and with it, the end of the mind's activity. But even in the finality of death, there are paradoxes that challenge this view. The fact that we fear it so. The question of life's meaning has preoccupied philosophers for millennia, and ancient thinkers offered a variety of interpretations that continue to shape our understanding today. For the Greeks, life's purpose was intertwined with virtue, wisdom, and self-knowledge. Socrates, perhaps the most influential of them all, believed that the pursuit of knowledge and understanding was the highest goal of life. Know thyself, he famously urged, suggesting that through introspection and philosophical inquiry, one could align themselves with the true essence of existence. Socrates' student, Plato, expanded on this idea, proposing that life's meaning lay in seeking the eternal truths of the forms, the ideal, immutable concepts behind the physical world. To Plato, life was a journey toward understanding these perfect forms, especially the form of the good, which would lead the soul to fulfillment. Aristotle, Plato's student, approached the question from a more practical angle. His concept of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or well-being, suggested that the meaning of life could be found in living a life of virtue, fulfilling one's potential, and achieving harmony between reason and action. Unlike Plato's focus on the abstract, Aristotle believed that true happiness could only be realized in the real world, through meaningful work, relationships, and the cultivation of moral character. Meanwhile, the Stoics, led by figures like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, offered a different interpretation. To them, the meaning of life was rooted in accepting the natural order of things, cultivating inner peace, and aligning oneself with reason and virtue. The Stoics believed that by mastering our desires and emotions, and by recognizing that many things in life are beyond our control, we could achieve tranquility and freedom from suffering. For the Stoics, the external world was fleeting and unpredictable, but one could find lasting meaning by focusing on what was within their control, namely, their thoughts, actions, and character. The ancient Indian philosophers, particularly those in the tradition of Hinduism and Buddhism, presented yet another view of life's meaning. In Hinduism, the pursuit of dharma, righteous living, artha, prosperity, karma, pleasure, and moksha, liberation from the cycle of rebirth, constituted the path to fulfillment. Life was seen as a spiritual journey where one could transcend the material world and realize union with the divine. Similarly, Buddhism taught that life's meaning was found in overcoming suffering, dukkha, through the path of enlightenment, where the ultimate goal was to attain nirvana, freedom from the cycle of birth and death. To be human is to exist with the awareness of our mortality, yet still seek meaning in the fleeting moments of life. It is a constant balancing act between our biological instincts and our capacity for reason, creativity, and emotion. We are the only creatures who ponder our existence, question our purpose, and shape our own identities. Being human means experiencing joy, pain, love, and loss, often with an understanding that these emotions are temporary, yet deeply significant. Philosophically, to be human is to wrestle with freedom and responsibility, to confront our own limitations while striving to transcend them. We build connections, share stories, and create art, all in an effort to make sense of a world that often feels chaotic. In the end, what it means to be human is not just about survival, but about creating meaning in a world that does not inherently provide it. The limits of human knowledge are a fundamental question in both philosophy and science. While we have made immense strides in understanding the world around us, there remains a vast expanse of the unknown. The quest for knowledge often reveals more questions than answers, suggesting that some truths may forever elude us. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant argued that there are inherent limits to human perception. Our minds are shaped by categories of understanding that may never fully grasp the true nature of reality. Science, too, faces its own boundaries, with some phenomena, like consciousness or the origins of the universe, remaining beyond our current understanding. Even if we continue to advance, there may always be mysteries too complex or too distant for us to comprehend. Perhaps the very nature of knowledge is not about knowing everything, but about accepting that some things are meant to remain unknown, challenging us to continue seeking without ever reaching a final answer. The problem of evil has perplexed philosophers and theologians for centuries. If a benevolent, all-powerful God exists, why does suffering persist in the world? This question challenges the very nature of divine justice and human existence. Some argue that evil is a necessary counterpart to free will. Without the possibility of suffering, we would lack true agency, unable to choose goodness or make meaningful decisions. Others, like the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus, questioned whether a benevolent God could truly exist in a world full of pain and suffering. Theologians have proposed various solutions. Some claim that suffering is a test, an opportunity for spiritual growth, or a result of human sin. But these explanations often fail to comfort those who endure suffering that seems arbitrary or excessive. Ultimately, the problem of evil may lie in the limits of human understanding. Perhaps suffering, like good, is part of a greater plan, even if we cannot fully grasp it. Happiness is often seen as a key component of a meaningful life, yet its relationship with meaning is complex. While some philosophers argue that happiness is the ultimate goal of human existence, others suggest that it's not happiness itself, but the pursuit of something deeper that gives life meaning. Aristotle, for instance, believed that true happiness comes from living a life of virtue and fulfilling one's potential, a state he called eudaimonia. To him, happiness wasn't a fleeting emotional state, but the result of living in accordance with reason and purpose. On the other hand, existentialist thinkers like Sartre and Camus argued that happiness alone can't provide meaning in an indifferent universe. Instead, meaning must be created through individual choices and actions, regardless of whether they lead to happiness. In the end, while happiness is important, it may be our pursuit of meaning, whether through relationships, work, or personal growth, that brings true fulfillment. To live authentically is to align one's actions, beliefs, and values with one's true self, free from societal expectations or external pressures. It's about embracing vulnerability, acknowledging one's flaws, and living in accordance with personal truths, even when those truths may not fit the norms. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre emphasized the importance of creating one's own identity rather than adhering to prescribed roles. To live authentically one must confront the existential reality that life has no inherent meaning, and thus meaning must be self-constructed. This process involves making choices that reflect personal desires and aspirations, without fear of judgment or failure. However, authenticity isn't a one-time achievement, but a continuous journey where individuals must regularly reassess their motivations and the ways they interact with the world. In living authentically, there is freedom, but also responsibility, as it requires a willingness to accept the consequences of one's choices and actions. The concept of fate versus free will has long been a topic of philosophical debate. Fate suggests that our lives are predestined, governed by forces beyond our control, whether by divine will, cosmic determinism, or an unalterable chain of events. In this view, every decision and event is part of a larger plan, and our sense of choice is an illusion. Free will, on the other hand, argues that we have the power to make choices independent of any preordained path. It allows for personal agency, moral responsibility, and the belief that we can shape our own destiny. Philosophers like Aristotle supported the idea of free will, asserting that humans can act in accordance with reason. Meanwhile, existential thinkers like Sartre believed that we are condemned to freedom, as we alone are responsible for creating meaning in a world devoid of inherent purpose. Ultimately, the tension between fate and free will may lie not in choosing one over the other, but in recognizing the delicate balance between the forces that shape us and the choices we make. The question of whether morality is objective or subjective has been a central issue in philosophy. Objective morality posits that certain moral principles exist independently of human beliefs or feelings, suggesting that some actions are right or wrong, regardless of individual opinions or cultural norms. This view is often associated with moral realism, which argues that moral facts are as real and unchanging as physical facts. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant supported objective morality, asserting that moral duties are derived from rationality and universal principles, such as the categorical imperative. On the other hand, subjective morality suggests that moral judgments are contingent upon personal preferences, cultural contexts, or societal norms. From this perspective, what is right or wrong varies across individuals and societies, and there are no absolute moral truths. Ethical relativism supports this view, highlighting the diversity of moral practices across cultures. Ultimately, whether morality is objective or subjective may depend on one's philosophical stance, as both perspectives raise questions about the nature of moral truths and how they should be understood in a complex, diverse world. If you could control your own destiny, the boundaries of possibility would seem limitless. Every decision, every choice, would become a direct thread in weaving the future you envision. The idea of fate, a force that has always felt beyond our grasp, would dissolve, and in its place, absolute freedom would reign. But with this power comes responsibility, a weight that forces us to confront the question of what kind of life we truly want. If we could shape every outcome, would we remain guided by virtue, or would our desires and impulses take the lead? In a world where nothing is left to chance, would the richness of uncertainty, the thrill of the unknown, be lost? The beauty of life may lie not in having absolute control, but in navigating the unpredictable paths it offers. While controlling our destiny sounds liberating, it might strip away the very essence of what makes life meaningful, its spontaneity and surprises. The ethics of immortality presents a complex dilemma. If we had the power to live forever, should we? On one hand, immortality could offer boundless opportunities for knowledge, growth, and the exploration of the universe. It might allow us to perfect skills, deepen relationships, and contribute to society without the constraints of time. However, the prospect of eternal life raises profound ethical concerns. Would immortality lead to a loss of meaning in life? If every day stretches on indefinitely, would we still value our experiences, relationships, and achievements, or would they become hollow in their repetition? Moreover, the issue of resource distribution and overpopulation arises. If only a select few could live forever, how would society handle the imbalance? The moral questions also touch on the nature of suffering. While immortality could end death, it could also perpetuate pain, loss, and existential boredom. Ultimately, the question is not just whether we should live forever, but whether we would truly want to, given the profound consequences it could have on the human experience. The paradox of choice suggests that while having options should empower us, an excess of choices can actually overwhelm and paralyze us. In a world where the number of decisions, big and small, continually expands, we often find ourselves drowning in possibilities, struggling to make choices that feel truly satisfying. Psychological studies show that too many options can lead to anxiety, regret, and even dissatisfaction, as we become fixated on the potential outcomes of the choices we didn't make. Instead of enhancing our freedom, this abundance of options often robs us of it, leaving us feeling trapped in indecision. Paradoxically, the more choices we have, the more we crave simplicity, the very thing we seem to resist in our consumer-driven society. The irony is clear. The pursuit of freedom through choice may, in fact, limit our true autonomy by overwhelming our capacity to decide. In the end, freedom may not lie in endless options, but in learning to embrace the choices that truly matter. Suffering, though often seen as something to avoid, plays an integral role in the human experience. It is through hardship that we are forced to confront our limitations, our vulnerabilities, and the fragility of life itself. Philosophers like Nietzsche argued that suffering is essential for growth, suggesting that it is through overcoming pain and adversity that we develop strength, resilience, and wisdom. Without suffering, we might lack the capacity to truly appreciate joy, peace, and success. Moreover, suffering often leads to self-reflection and a deeper understanding of the world, pushing us to question our values and purpose. While it can feel unbearable at times, it also connects us to the shared human condition, fostering empathy and compassion for others. In this way, suffering, though painful, is not a mere burden. It is a catalyst for personal transformation and a means through which we find deeper meaning in life. The nature of God has been a central question in philosophy and theology, with diverse interpretations across different cultures and religions. In many monotheistic traditions, God is understood as a transcendent, all-powerful, and all-knowing being who created the universe and governs its order. For example, in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, God is often seen as a personal deity, deeply involved in the affairs of the world, yet beyond human comprehension. Philosophers like Thomas Aquinas argued that God is both immanent and transcendent, a being whose existence is necessary for the order and existence of everything else. However, other perspectives challenge the traditional conception of God. Some see God not as a personal entity, but as an impersonal force or principle that underlies the cosmos, as in certain strands of Eastern philosophy, such as Taoism or pantheism. In these views, God is the unifying force of existence, not separate from the world, but inherent in everything. The nature of God also raises profound questions about morality, the problem of evil, and free will. If God is all-powerful and benevolent, why does evil exist in the world? This paradox has led to numerous theological debates and responses. Ultimately, the nature of God remains a deeply personal and often mysterious concept, shaped by individual beliefs, religious doctrines, and philosophical inquiry. The trolley problem presents a stark moral dilemma. Should one sacrifice one life to save many others? Imagine a runaway trolley heading toward 5 people tied to the tracks, unable to move. You stand beside a lever that can divert the trolley onto another track, where it will kill 1 person. Do you pull the lever, knowingly causing the death of 1 to save 5? Or do you refrain, allowing the trolley to take its natural course and kill 5? This thought experiment challenges our moral intuitions. Utilitarianism, which seeks the greatest good for the greatest number, would argue in favor of pulling the lever, prioritizing the collective well-being over the individual. However, deontological ethics, championed by Kant, holds that actions should adhere to moral rules, regardless of outcomes. In this view, pulling the lever would be morally wrong because it involves actively causing harm. The trolley problem doesn't provide clear answers. Instead, it exposes the tension between different ethical frameworks and forces us to confront the complexity of moral decision-making in life and death situations. Language is not just a tool for communication. It profoundly shapes the way we perceive and understand the world. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis argues that the structure and vocabulary of a language influence thought, suggesting that different languages might create different cognitive realities. For example, cultures with multiple words for a single concept, like color, perceive and categorize that concept more intricately. In contrast, languages with fewer distinctions may limit the way speakers experience those concepts. Language also affects how we think about time, space, and relationships. Some languages, like Mandarin, treat time as cyclical, while English sees it as linear, which can influence how speakers perceive the passage of time. The use of gendered language can shape attitudes toward gender roles and equality, subtly reinforcing societal norms. In essence, language doesn't merely reflect thought, it can actively shape our thoughts, influencing how we categorize experiences and interact with the world around us. Thus, the words we choose to use define not just communication, but the very structure of our thinking. Plato's allegory of the cave presents a profound reflection on the nature of reality and human perception. In this allegory, prisoners are chained inside a dark cave, only able to see shadows cast on a wall by objects behind them. These shadows are all they know of the world. One prisoner is freed and exposed to the outside world, where he experiences the sun and the true forms of objects. Initially, the light blinds him, but gradually he begins to understand the difference between the shadows and the real world. When he returns to the cave to share his discoveries, the other prisoners reject his claims. unable to comprehend a reality beyond their limited experience. This allegory challenges the idea of knowledge and perception, suggesting that most of us live in a state of ignorance, perceiving only a fraction of the truth. It encourages us to question the limits of our understanding and consider that what we believe to be real may only be a shadow of a deeper truth. Ultimately, it speaks to the transformative power of knowledge, the difficulty of awakening to a broader reality, and the resistance people often have to change their established beliefs. Heidegger's exploration of being delves into one of the most fundamental philosophical questions. What does it mean to be? In his seminal work, Being and Time, Heidegger argued that modern philosophy has overlooked the concept of being, taking it for granted rather than truly questioning its nature. For Heidegger, being is not merely a characteristic of objects or beings, but the very foundation of existence itself. To understand what it means to be, one must first understand Dasein, a German term Heidegger uses to refer to human existence. Dasein, which literally means being there, highlights our awareness of our own being and our place in the world. Heidegger believes that human beings are defined by their relationship with time and death. Our awareness of our mortality shapes our experience, driving us to confront the question of our existence in an authentic way. Rather than seeing being as an abstract concept, Heidegger insists that it is something we experience through our actions, choices, and engagement with the world. To be, in Heidegger's view, is to exist authentically, embracing the fact that we are finite, and in doing so, creating meaning in our lives. This focus on being urges us to engage with our existence not passively, but actively, questioning our place in the world and how we relate to time, death, and others. If we could stop time, the world would become an eerie, frozen tableau where every movement and sound would cease to exist, leaving only us and our thoughts. At first, the prospect of infinite time might seem exhilarating, offering endless opportunities for exploration, reflection, and control. We could examine the world in its minutest detail, move through places unobserved, or experience moments without the pressure of time's relentless march. However, such power could quickly become a burden. Without time's flow, there would be no change, no progress, and no way to distinguish moments from one another. Relationships, too, would lose their meaning, as human connection is bound by the shared experience of time. In a world without time, growth and decay would be frozen, and the essence of what it means to live, our interactions, achievements, and challenges, would be nullified. Ultimately, the ability to stop time might reveal that it is time itself, with its passing and its inevitable end, that gives our lives meaning and urgency. Without it, existence could become an endless, unfulfilled pause. The ethics of technology centers around a profound question. Can we truly control the creations we unleash into the world? As technology advances at a rapid pace, we increasingly find ourselves at the mercy of inventions that outstrip our ability to predict their consequences. While technologies like artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and automation hold immense potential to improve lives, they also introduce complex ethical dilemmas. Can we regulate technologies to ensure they are used for the greater good? Once a technology is developed, its applications often surpass initial intentions, leading to unintended consequences as seen in the rise of social media and surveillance systems. This raises concerns about autonomy, privacy, and the power of corporations and governments. Moreover, the creators of these technologies may not fully understand the social and moral implications of their inventions. In this sense, technology poses a paradox. The more control we seek over it, the more it seems to shape and control us. Ultimately, the challenge lies in navigating the delicate balance between innovation and responsibility, ensuring that we wield technology in ways that reflect our values, not just our capabilities. The concept of the eternal return, as proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche, challenges us with a profound question. If you had to live your life over and over again, exactly as it is, would you be content with it? Nietzsche suggests that the idea of repeating every moment eternally is both a test and a reflection of how we live our lives. If we cannot embrace our lives fully, with all their joys and suffering, then we have not lived authentically. The eternal return forces us to confront the weight of our choices, actions, and regrets, compelling us to live in a way that we would be willing to repeat indefinitely. It asks us whether we live with enough passion, purpose, and meaning to make every moment feel valuable. The idea is unsettling, for it removes the possibility of escape from our mistakes or misgivings. But in this challenge, it also invites a radical freedom to choose a life worth living, one that we would embrace even in its repetitions. Would we, in the face of eternity, still choose the same path? Or would we seek a new, more meaningful direction? The concept of the eternal return, as proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche, challenges us with a profound question. If you had to live your life over and over again, exactly as it is, would you be content with it? Nietzsche suggests that the idea of repeating the illusion of control is the belief that we have more power over our lives and circumstances than we actually do. From a young age, we are taught to believe that through hard work, decisions, and perseverance, we can shape our destinies. Yet life is full of unpredictable forces, chance, the actions of others, societal constraints that remain beyond our control. While we may steer our lives in certain directions, the outcome is never entirely in our hands. Psychology shows that people often overestimate their ability to control outcomes, a phenomenon known as locus of control. The more we cling to this illusion, the more we struggle with frustration and anxiety when things don't go as planned. But acknowledging the limits of our control doesn't mean we should resign ourselves to passivity. Rather, it invites us to focus on what we can influence, our responses, attitudes, and choices, while accepting that some things are simply beyond our reach. In this acceptance, we might find a deeper, more grounded sense of power. David Hume's problem of induction challenges the very foundation of how we know the world. Induction, the process by which we draw general conclusions from specific observations, is central to scientific reasoning and everyday life. For example, if we observe the sun rising every day, we infer that it will rise again tomorrow. However, Hume argues that this reasoning is not logically justifiable. Just because the sun has risen every day in the past does not guarantee it will rise again, as there is no logical connection between past and future events. Hume's skepticism reveals a deeper issue. Our experiences, while seemingly reliable, cannot provide certain knowledge about the future. This casts doubt on the very basis of empirical science, which relies on induction. So, Can we trust our experiences? According to Hume, we must accept that our knowledge is always tentative, based on habit and probability rather than certainty. In this way, our understanding of the world, while practical, remains fundamentally uncertain. David Hume's problem of induction challenges the very foundation of how we know the world. Induction, the process by which we draw general conclusions from specific observations, is central to scientific reasoning and everyday life. For example, if we observe the sun rising every day, we infer that it will rise again tomorrow. However, Hume argues that this reasoning is not logically justifiable. Just because the sun has risen every day in the past does not guarantee it will rise again, as there is no logical connection between past and future events. Hume's skepticism reveals a deeper issue. Our experiences, while seemingly reliable, cannot provide certain knowledge about the future. This casts doubt on the very basis of empirical science, which relies on induction. So, can we trust our experiences? According to Hume, we must accept that our knowledge is always tentative, based on habit and probability rather than certainty. In this way, our understanding of the world, while practical, remains fundamentally uncertain. Solipsism is the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is certain to exist, and that the external world, including other people, may only be projections of one's own consciousness. According to solipsism, everything we experience, the world around us, the people we interact with, and even the sensations we feel, could be nothing more than constructs of our mind. This radical view challenges the very nature of reality, suggesting that we cannot truly know if anything exists outside our perception. Solipsism raises unsettling questions about the reliability of our senses and the existence of others. If we can't directly access the minds of others, how can we be sure they are real and not just products of our imagination? While most reject solipsism due to its paradoxical and self-centered nature, it serves as a powerful reminder of the limits of human knowledge and perception. The question remains, can we ever truly know anything beyond our own consciousness, or is reality merely a projection of our mind? The question of whether morality is based on reason or emotion has sparked intense philosophical debate for centuries. On one side, reason-based moral theories, like those of Immanuel Kant, argue that moral principles should be grounded in rational thought and universal rules. According to Kant, we should act according to maxims that could be universally applied, independent of personal desires or emotional impulses. For reason-based ethics, morality is objective and can be discovered through logical reasoning and reflection. In contrast, emotion-based moral theories suggest that our feelings are central to moral decision-making. Figures like David Hume argued that reason alone cannot motivate us to act morally. Rather, it is our emotions, such as empathy, compassion, or outrage, that guide our moral choices. Hume believed that moral judgments arise from our emotional responses to the suffering or well-being of others, highlighting the importance of human feelings in moral life. Many contemporary thinkers acknowledge that morality likely involves both reason and emotion. Reason can help us analyze complex situations and determine what actions are morally right, while emotion gives us the motivation to act with compassion and empathy. Ultimately, morality may not be fully reducible to either reason or emotion, but instead may emerge from the interplay between both. The nature of truth is one of the most fundamental and debated concepts in philosophy. At its core, truth is generally understood as the state of being in accord with fact or reality. However, the nature of how we arrive at truth and what constitutes truth varies significantly across different philosophical frameworks. The correspondence theory of truth, one of the oldest and most widely accepted views, holds that a statement is true if it corresponds to the way things are in the world. For example, the statement "the sky is blue" is true if, in reality, the sky is indeed blue. Another prominent view is the coherence theory of truth, which suggests that truth is a matter of coherence within a set of beliefs or propositions. A belief is true if it is logically consistent with other beliefs we hold, forming a coherent system of understanding. The pragmatic theory of truth, associated with philosophers like William James and Charles Peirce, argues that truth is what works in practice. A belief or proposition is considered true if it leads to successful action or useful outcomes when applied in real life. Postmodernist views challenge the idea of absolute truth, arguing that truth is subjective and can vary depending on perspective, culture, or language. According to this view, truths are socially constructed and may not be universally applicable. Ultimately, the nature of truth remains elusive, and the ongoing philosophical debate reflects the complexity of understanding reality, language, and human perception. Truth may not be a single fixed entity, but a multifaceted concept that is shaped by context, experience, and interpretation. Socrates' famous declaration that I know nothing reflects a profound and humble approach to wisdom. Far from being an admission of ignorance, it reveals a deeper understanding of the limitations of human knowledge. For Socrates, true wisdom lies not in possessing vast amounts of information, but in recognizing the boundaries of one's knowledge. By acknowledging his ignorance, Socrates was able to open himself to genuine learning and questioning. This approach, known as the Socratic method, involves asking probing questions to challenge assumptions and stimulate critical thinking, rather than providing answers. Socrates believed that knowledge begins with recognizing our own lack of knowledge, which frees us from the arrogance of false certainty. His wisdom was in his constant pursuit of truth, always aware that no matter how much one learns, there is always more to understand. In essence, to know nothing is not a denial of wisdom, but an invitation to perpetual inquiry and intellectual humility. The concept of nothingness in philosophy explores the absence of being, existence, or meaning. In existentialism, particularly in the works of Jean-Paul Sartre and Martin Heidegger, nothingness plays a central role in understanding human existence. Sartre famously described nothingness as the negation that defines consciousness. He argued that human beings are not defined by any essential nature, but by what they choose to become, thus creating a void or nothingness that allows for freedom and possibility. This nothingness is both a source of anxiety and a foundation for individual meaning-making. Heidegger, on the other hand, saw nothingness as a confrontation with the finitude of life. For him, facing nothingness, especially in the form of death, allows individuals to live authentically, as it reveals the true nature of existence and the temporality of life. In a more metaphysical sense, the concept of nothingness challenges our understanding of being and existence itself. What does it mean for something to not exist? How can we even conceive of nothing. Philosophically, nothingness forces us to reconsider the nature of reality, the limits of human perception, and the very fabric of being, as it remains an elusive, paradoxical concept, present in its absence. The idea of the universe as a giant machine is a concept that has been explored throughout philosophy and science. This mechanistic view suggests that the universe operates like a well-designed, predictable machine, governed by laws of nature and cause and effect relationships. The roots of this idea can be traced back to the work of early philosophers like René Descartes, who viewed the universe as a mechanical system operating according to mathematical principles. Descartes compared the body and even the universe itself to a machine, driven by precise deterministic forces. In the realm of modern science, this view is echoed in the Newtonian model of the universe, where the cosmos is seen as a vast clockwork system, with each part functioning according to fixed natural laws. However, with the advent of quantum mechanics and the theory of relativity, this image of a rigidly predictable universe has been challenged. The universe, it seems, is not always mechanistic in the traditional sense. Quantum physics reveals an underlying randomness and uncertainty, suggesting that not everything operates on deterministic principles. Philosophically, seeing the universe as a machine raises questions about free will, consciousness, and the nature of life itself. If the universe is just a machine, are we merely complex configurations of matter? Or is there something more, something beyond mechanical processes, that makes us conscious beings with agency? In this sense, the question of whether the universe is merely a machine leads us to confront the limits of scientific explanation and our understanding of existence itself. The role of consciousness in the universe is a profound and complex question that touches on philosophy, science, and metaphysics. Consciousness allows us to be aware of our own existence, our thoughts, and our surroundings, and it serves as the lens through which we interpret the world. Some thinkers, like René Descartes, believed consciousness is central to understanding what it means to be human, famously stating, "Cogito, ergo sum," I think, therefore I am. This suggests that consciousness is not only essential for self-awareness, but also the foundation of reality itself. In the broader context of the universe, the role of consciousness becomes even more mysterious. Is consciousness an emergent property of complex biological systems, like the human brain, or is it a fundamental aspect of reality, embedded in the very fabric of existence? Some proponents of panpsychism, such as philosopher Galen Strawson, argue that consciousness may be a basic feature of the universe, existing in varying degrees in all matter, from atoms to galaxies. This suggests that consciousness is not confined to humans or animals, but is interwoven with the material world. The philosophy of time delves into the nature of time itself, exploring the relationship between the past, present, and future, and questioning whether time is a real, objective feature of the universe or merely a human construct. One of the central debates in the philosophy of time is whether time is absolute or relative. Isaac Newton argued for a view of absolute time, where time flows uniformly, independent of events or human experience. In contrast, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity suggests that time is relative, influenced by the speed and gravity of objects, which means that time is not a fixed backdrop, but part of the dynamic fabric of the universe. Another key question is whether the past, present, and future exist in the same way. In the eternalism view, all points in time, past, present, and future, are equally real, and the passage of time is an illusion. This stands in contrast to presentism, which holds that only the present moment is real, and both the past and future are unreal or non-existent. The philosophy of time also touches on human experience. Our perception of time often seems to flow from the past, through the present, to the future. But is this a true reflection of how time operates, or is it merely how we perceive it? Is time merely a measurement of change, or does it have an inherent quality that governs existence? Furthermore, the future remains unknown and uncertain, while the past is fixed and immutable, raising existential questions about free will, destiny, and the possibility of changing the course of time. Ultimately, the philosophy of time challenges us to consider the nature of reality itself, the limits of human perception, and the role that time plays in shaping the way we live, think, and understand the universe. Time, in all its complexity, remains one of the most elusive and fascinating aspects of existence. The paradox of personal identity explores the question of what makes us the same person over time, despite changes in our bodies, minds, and experiences. Philosophers have long debated whether identity is based on continuity of the body, the mind, or something else entirely. One of the most famous formulations of this issue is the ship of Theseus paradox. If a ship has all of its parts replaced, is it still the same ship? Applied to personal identity, this raises the question: if we change physically and psychologically over time, from our cells to our memories, are we still the same person? John Locke, in the 17th century, proposed that personal identity is based on psychological continuity. According to Locke, we remain the same person as long as we retain the same consciousness and memories, even if our physical bodies change. This view suggests that identity is tied to the mind rather than the body, meaning that as long as we remember our past experiences, we are the same person, even if our physical selves are radically altered. However, this theory faces challenges, such as the problem of memory distortion or loss. What happens if we forget key parts of our life or develop amnesia? Are we still the same person then? Additionally, advancements in neuroscience and the philosophy of the brain argue that our identity might be closely tied to the physical state of our brain, which challenges the notion of identity as purely psychological. To be free is often considered one of the most fundamental aspirations of human existence, yet its true meaning is complex and multifaceted. At its core, freedom is the ability to act, think, and choose without undue constraint. However, the nature of this freedom varies depending on philosophical, social, and personal perspectives. From a political standpoint, freedom often refers to the absence of external constraints, such as tyranny or oppression. This view emphasizes political liberties, freedom of speech, freedom of choice, and the right to live without fear of unjust authority. For thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, freedom is tied to the concept of autonomy and the protection of individual rights within a social contract. Philosophically, the idea of freedom extends into deeper questions about human nature and existence. Existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre argue that freedom is inherent in human consciousness, but it comes with a burden, the responsibility for one's choices. According to Sartre, freedom isn't just about external liberty, but also the freedom to define oneself through actions, even in a world devoid of inherent meaning. In this sense, freedom can be an existential struggle, as we must constantly create our essence through our decisions, without any preordained guide. On the other hand, determinists challenge the notion of absolute freedom. They argue that every action and decision is shaped by prior causes, genetics, environment, and past experiences, which means that true freedom is an illusion. If our choices are determined by factors beyond our control, can we truly be free? The question of whether artificial intelligence, AI, can ever be truly conscious touches on the nature of consciousness itself, a deeply complex and largely mysterious phenomenon. Consciousness, in humans, involves not only awareness of the self, but also subjective experiences, emotions, and a sense of being. AI, however, is fundamentally different in its structure. It processes information and performs tasks based on algorithms and data without any inherent sense of self or subjective experience. From a computational standpoint, AI can simulate behaviors that appear conscious, like learning, problem-solving, and emotional recognition. However, these are driven by pre-programmed algorithms or machine learning models, not an inner awareness. While AI can be designed to replicate certain cognitive functions, there's no evidence to suggest that it experiences emotions or thoughts the way humans do. Philosophers like John Searle have posited that even if AI appears conscious, it could be a form of synthetic consciousness that lacks true subjective experience. His famous Chinese room argument illustrates the difference between understanding a language and merely manipulating symbols based on rules. AI might simulate intelligence, but without the internal experience of understanding, it remains fundamentally different from human consciousness.